Two balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. This is way back. Walk the ball. Let's Taylor.
What's up, everyone? Welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined tonight by Blake Williams. And obviously, if you're a Dodgers fan tuning into this show, you know that it has been a wild, some might say, Blake, a depressing 24 hours for Dodgers fans. We're going to get into the latest on Mookie Betts' injury, Yoshinobu Yamamoto's injury. Let me just start here, Blake. Can you remember a time where two injuries that were this significant happened in such a short amount of time for the Dodgers?
Not off the top of my head, but I'm sure with all the injuries they've had in the past that it's been there. Like, the injury that always hurts me the most was Hanley's in 2013, because kind of felt like they were going to make a run to the World Series that year, and then Hanley broke his ribs. And Joe Kelly, we can still be mad at him a little bit for that one, even though he's on our team now. But yeah, I mean, it's been tough for the Dodgers here so far. Like, for regular season in June, it's about as bad as you can get there.
Yeah, I'm with you. By the way, we appreciate, of course, everybody joining us live on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. I see Laura, Hawaiian Kira, Aaron, Ederico, Michael, Craig, a bunch of usual faces. Kenny, thank you so much for joining us. We're getting to the live question and answer. Of course, as this show goes along, if you've got a super chat that you want a question answered or a comment responded to immediately, go ahead and leave us a super chat. Otherwise, we will leave some time for everybody at the end of the show to get those questions in. Here's the plan for today. As I said, we're going to talk Mookie injury, what the Dodgers do from here. We're going to talk Yamamoto injury and what this means long-term. We've got some injury updates. Bobby Miller, Clayton Kershaw, Max Muncy, and Michael Grove. We'll talk about one of the best stories. If you want some positivity, we've got a cool Dodgers story to talk about, as well as a reliever that the Dodgers have been linked to. But Blake, let's just start big picture. Off, not ignoring the injury front for a moment. The Dodgers wrapped up a 3-3 week after taking 2 out of 3 from the Royals. They're 6-4 over their last 10. They have an 8-game lead in the division, the second best record in the National League, the 5th best record in Major League Baseball, and 2 of the 5 worst teams in baseball on the schedule this upcoming week. So big picture, if you zoom out and you just try and make yourself feel a little bit better after what we all witnessed in the last 24 hours, it's good news for the Dodgers. Again, 8-game lead in the division, and the Rockies and the Angels due up this week.
I mean, I know the Rockies are bad, but games and cores can always go kind of crazy. So we'll see what actually happens there. The Angels always play the Dodgers pretty tough and kind of show their best. So I know they're not good teams record-wise, but still some tough competition for the Dodgers just based on the other things. I think regarding this past week, obviously the injuries and stuff we'll get into, but 3-3 at home isn't great. I know they played quality teams, but I think you kind of want to have a record above 500 when you're at home and then try and play 500 when you're on the road. So the Dodgers have been kind of in that 500 slump for a bit now here with both home and road. So I want to say hopefully they pick it up soon, but it's going to be real tough without some of their guys they just lost.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Saturday night's game is the one that I feel like, obviously, when Yamamoto goes down after 2 innings, the bullpen gets thrown for a loop and they lose that. They blow a 2-1 lead and lose that game 7-2. That feels like there's at least an asterisk next to it. If we're looking at like a 3-3 homestand, that felt like a game that, all things considered, you would have hoped would go differently if Yamamoto is healthy, or even if the Dodgers just don't lose their starting pitcher after 2 innings. But I'm with you, losing 2 out of 3 to the Rangers, scoring just 5 runs in the 3 losses this week, while they did all right in the win, scoring 22 runs in those 3 wins, 15 of them coming in one game. But it continues to be kind of that back and forth. And look, at the end of the day, the 8-game lead in the National League West is the most important number here, because if they continue to win the division and continue to have the second best record in the National League, which they do at the moment, then that's going to play out well for them moving forward and give them a breath, right? Like, because imagine what the narrative would be, Blake, if Mookie Betts and Yamamoto went out this week, and if the Padres were competitive or the Diamondbacks were competitive, and it was like a 2.5-game lead in the division. Like, I know we've seen some doom and gloom of late because we are our own toughest critics, I think, as Dodgers fans. And yet if there's ever a moment in the season to appreciate that we have an 8-game lead in the National League West, today of all days feels like that day.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And of course, it seems like even though the Dodgers haven't been playing great, like no one in the National League is playing well at all.
Yeah.
I think there's a few teams over 500 and everyone else is just kind of treading water. So even without Mookie and Yamamoto, the Dodgers still have talent to keep winning games. So they just need to tread water, basically, is stay up with everyone else, don't fall too far behind, and just keep playing solid baseball and they'll be okay.
Yeah, I see some people in the chat. I'm curious your thoughts. They wonder is it possible that these type of injuries actually cause the Dodgers to rally together and perform maybe slightly above expectations that we may have for them, given that they're missing their second best hitter and their second best pitcher for what seems like it'll be a long time? Like, do you have any hope that maybe the guys kind of get together and say, hey, we got to pick it up. We got to make up for the fact that Mookie's gone. We got to perform well for Yamamoto while he's out. Like, do you see that happening?
I don't want to say it's not possible, but I feel like with so many of the guys already going through slumps, they've probably had those conversations about trying to pick up production and not letting the top of the lineup carry them. And then also that could kind of create pressure on them and start pressing even more, and maybe they fall into bigger slumps. So until we actually see what they do, it's really hard to say, like, yeah, they're going to do better or do worse or anything, because it could go either way, really.
Yeah. Real quick before we move on to injuries, we did have a game today that I think is worth talking about. The Dodgers beat the Royals today 3-0. Shohei Ohtani hits 2 home runs. Freddie Freeman hits a home run. That one was back-to-back with Ohtani's second home run. Glass now 7 innings, 3 hits, no earned, 1 walk, 9 strikeouts in a game where they absolutely needed that from him. Not only to give a lot of the guys in the bullpen a break, but just to sort of steady the ship a little bit. You get Hudson and Phillips who come in and do exactly what you expect of them, allow 1 base runner in 2 innings. So again, I know 3 is not a big number, but to see Ohtani hit 2 home runs and Freddie Freeman hit a home run, it feels like a positive upswing to the end of a week where if this game had gone the other way on top of all the injuries, I think the tone in this chat would be even darker than it is right now.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm going to be a little negative here again. Like, the offense didn't do anything outside of Ohtani homering and Freeman homering, and Freeman's been playing well recently. Ohtani has been picking up the power recently, even though the batting average isn't really there. So, I mean, it's still a little concerning to me from the offensive standpoint that that was their only run production in the game. But to be positive, I don't think we had any stream or anything after Chris Taylor's homer and that comeback win. So can we give Chris Taylor some love here?
Yeah, the floor is yours.
I mean, he's been struggling all year. He came through with probably the biggest hit in that game, along with Miguel Rojas there, and the Dodgers went on to win there. Like, Dave Roberts stuck with him, and we can debate whether that was a good decision or not, but Chris Taylor came through, and that's all that really matters at the end there. So, yeah, it's good to see him start actually hitting a little bit, and hopefully he can kind of keep that going a bit.
I like this from you, Blake. I think you get pegged as a very negative person sometimes, and yet here you are defending Chris Taylor, giving him praise, saying, hey, we shouldn't criticize Dave for sticking with him for so long. I like this version of you, Blake.
I mean, Chris Taylor is going to be on the roster. We got to try and make some positive out of it here. And the Dodgers will be a better team if Chris Taylor is good, and they'll be a worse team if he's not good. So you kind of have to keep rooting for him.
I think they'll be about the same if he's not good. Because
if with Mookie out now, like if Chris Taylor can step up a bit, I think that would be a big help to them, especially at the bottom of the lineup with Kike struggling. And you're going to see Miguel Rojas get a lot of playing time, and we'll see how that actually kind of affects his body and how productive he's been. And then Kevon Biggio has not shown much of anything yet. So, I mean, Chris Taylor stepping up would be huge for this team.
Yeah. Look, it would be huge. You and I have talked at length about whether or not we have any confidence that he will. I think we both had him last on a list of like 6 guys that we had confidence in. So maybe the home run is what turns it around for him. We can all cross our fingers and hope. I still think if you want to hope for a turnaround at the bottom of the lineup, there's a few other guys that I would be more optimistic about to start with. Let's get to a couple super chats here. Jonathan Montgomery says it all.
Is that a good awe or a bad awe?
I can't imagine it's a good awe. I can't imagine there's a positive awe here. So I'm going to read into this negatively. Jonathan, if I'm wrong, you tell me. I imagine this is just a guttural reaction to Mookie Betts and Yoshinobu Yamamoto being out and, just feeling it a little bit. Thomas with the super chat. Will the Dodgers get Robert Jr. or Bo Bichette or both? Your thoughts, Blake?
Yes. I think they're going to be in discussions for both of them. Whether they actually match up on trades is always a tough thing to predict because there's so many variables that go into it. I'll say the Dodgers don't get either of them. Just gut reaction there. But I think they'll do something that makes people pretty happy.
Okay. I mean, Bo Bichette has basically 2.5 years left on his, 1.5 years left on his contract this year and then 2025. And then he's a free agent. He's already locked in. He signed a 3-year, $33.6 million deal. I guess my question with Bichette is, are we positive the Blue Jays are going to be sellers here? I mean, they're 500. They're 14 games back in the division, but this is a team that has historically been competitive, that has spent money. I guess with him, I wonder about why we're penciling in that he's going to be a trade target. Am I missing something?
I think there's a few reports about him being available, and that's why people are bringing him up. And I think that goes back to the offseason that said they were willing to deal him. So, I mean, there's always going to be speculation about good players on average to bad teams. So that's part of it there.
Look, I'd be far more interested in Bo Bichette. I would have said that prior to Mookie Betts getting an injury. And as we'll talk about in a second, I believe that even more after a Mookie Betts injury. I think Bichette is both a really, really high quality player at a position of need, a year and a half of team control. These are all things that I like. He's also a guy that if they wanted to extend, they could, and you're kind of getting him in the prime of his career, which I think is great. He doesn't have, many of the concerns, I guess, that I have with Robert, that worry me a little bit. So I like Bo Bichette as an option for the Dodgers if he is truly available. And I'll say this, Blake, I'd be willing to pay for him. I know the cost is going to be high for a guy like that, but that doesn't scare me off when it comes to a guy like Bo Bichette. Like, would you be? We got your air conditioning going on over there, I think. But would you be willing?
Lawnmower outside.
Oh, perfect. Would you be willing to pay up for Bo Bichette, knowing what the cost might be?
I would pay up for either of them. I mean, they're both really talented players that fill a need for the Dodgers. I think Robert might be more possible just because the White Sox are definitely selling and they need kind of everything. So the Dodgers could say, here's a top prospect catcher. Here's James Outman to replace Robert. Here's a few pitching prospects and throw out a few other names. And then they're also going to send back Paul DeYoung and maybe a Tommy Pham to the Dodgers. And you kind of do all your one-stop shopping there. Maybe they might need a starting pitcher now. Maybe you get a little crazier, throw in Garrett Crochet. That's not all happening, everyone. I'm just kidding. They're not getting all those plays. But you could do one-stop shopping with the White Sox is my main point there. And I think the Dodgers farm system kind of matches up pretty well with the White Sox needs because it's everything. Yeah. So I just think that's a little more possible. And other teams might be a little scared of Robert because of his injury history, but the Dodgers have never shied away from getting a player because of their injury history. And sometimes they might value that a little more because in the sense of other teams being scared off of an injured player or a guy with an injury history, you can probably get them a little cheaper at that point then too. So I think that's kind of right up their alley there.
Let's save some of the trade stuff. We're going to get to that in a bit. We've got a couple more super chats here. Richard says it's a golden opportunity for Chris Taylor, Kike, and Miggy to show up and prove their value on the roster. If not, there's always pizza delivery opportunities. Chris Taylor, Kike Hernandez, Miguel Rojas. I'll ask you a similar question to what I believe I asked you a week ago. Which of these three guys, if you had to put some money down on one of these threes offensively, proving their value, so to speak, who do you think is going to be the best hitter from here on out of these three?
I mean, Miguel Rojas seems like the obvious one because he's actually been doing it this year. But because of that, I also feel like there's some regression that might be coming there, especially playing more and getting into that everyday role where it's going to take a bigger toll on your body. So I don't think it's so straightforward as just saying Miguel Rojas. Chris Taylor probably has the best track record of them all, but he has looked the most lost of them all. So I feel like you could make a case there for or against him. And I feel like Kike might be the one I'm least optimistic about just because he doesn't have a good track record and he hasn't been good this year. So Like, I just don't know what my argument for him would be.
Yeah, I think it's Rojas. I'm with you. Like, and I don't even know if it's obvious because, again, the track record on Rojas is really, really bad. But at least we're seeing him do it. Chris Taylor, this is a prolonged slump of more than a year in which he's been pretty bad. Kike Hernandez, we've gone over on this show. If you look at his career numbers, he's had like one good season ever, and he's been really, really bad other than that. And so, yeah, I think it's Miguel Rojas. We're going to get into in a little bit, like regular playing time, platoon stuff, how much that helps or hurts him moving forward. But I think it's a great question, Richard, and stay tuned because we're going to chat a little bit more about that in a moment. Christopher with another super chat. We appreciate all these super chats, by the way, Thomas, Jonathan, Richard, and Christopher. Who's going to start at shortstop now? I joked that if we were just simply looking for engagement, Blake, we could have posted Gavin Lux back to shortstop, ? Just to get all the trolls out of their caves. It's going to be Miguel Rojas, presumably every single day. Kike Hernandez, it appears, will be the backup because Chris Taylor, I believe, has kind of been moved out of the infield. Gavin Lux will not be taking any ground balls at shortstop, would be my prediction. So it feels like it's going to be Rojas basically every day with Kike Hernandez mixed in. Is that your read as well?
Yeah, but I would say maybe like 60 to 70% of the time, Miguel Rojas and Kike filling in that 30 to 40% instead of the everyday thing necessarily.
Yeah.
So you're going to see Rojas get the majority of playing time. Dave Roberts already confirmed that. So there's not much more to that.
Jonathan wants to know, now that Yamamoto is down, do we have an update on Danny Duffy? Have we checked in on Danny Duffy lately, Blake?
Yeah, he's still not throwing yet, and he might come back at some point, and we'll see. I think he's on the
hilarious.
same timeline as Jimmy Nelson.
I just Googled his name. February 16th, 2024. Danny Duffy. Hold on. I just clicked. Danny Duffy on a mission to prove himself post-recovery. So this was with the Rangers, ready to, quote, be an athlete again after winter ball success. That was February of 2024. That's the last update we got on Danny Duffy. So there you go, Jonathan. Hopefully we answered your question there. Okay, let's talk about these two injuries because obviously the Dodgers lose. I tweeted their second best hitter and their second best pitcher in an 18-hour stretch. The thought that came to my mind when both of these things happened was, which of these two injuries is more significant to what the Dodgers are trying to accomplish? And immediately I was like, you know what? I think that's a dumb question because Mookie Betts is far more valuable to the Dodgers than Yamamoto is. The only thing that gave me pause, Blake, was that Mookie Betts, who has a fracture in his hand, versus Yamamoto, who has a, quote, strained rotator cuff after some more testing was done today. The only reason that I think it's possible this question isn't dumb, Blake, is because with Betts, I feel fairly confident that he will be back this year. We'll talk about timelines in a little bit, but let's say this is a 10-week injury. He'd be back by the beginning of September, have time in the regular season. Yamamoto, I don't know what number I would put on it, but I'm not 100% confident he's going to pitch again. So that would be my only pushback to the idea that Mookie Betts' injury is obviously more concerning than Yamamoto's. Do you think there's any argument to be made for Yamamoto's injury being more significant or potentially more significant than Mookie Betts?
So before we came on here, Jeff told me I could call him dumb for this question. So Jeff, you're dumb. I'm saying it. I have permission, everyone. So there we go. Got that out of the way. Regarding the question, I think it's fairly obvious Mookie's the bigger impact right now. I think no one can really debate that. He's an everyday player, and just in a general sense, they're more valuable than pitchers to a club on like an everyday basis because they're out there every day, whereas Yamamoto is pitching once per week. But I do somewhat agree that I'm pretty sure Mookie's going to come back by around September, whereas Yamamoto, we're not really sure what the timeline is there. Like, if he misses the entire rest of the season, it wouldn't totally shock me.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that's the case at this point yet, but pitcher injuries, shoulder, elbow stuff, it's just always so tough to predict and kind of get through. And then say he actually does start throwing again at some point, will he have enough time to rehab and actually build back up to be a starter that can go in the postseason and be ready for you? So I think it is kind of a fair question to ask, and it is more concern. It's more concerning with Yamamoto, but I think Mookie's impacts them more. So I think that's the way I'd phrase it. Yeah. Of course, if it gets to the postseason and Yamamoto's still out, then he's going to be the one impacting them more. But I also have a little more trust that they have the pitching depth to kind of fill in that. Like, I could see Bobby Miller stepping up into that number 2 role and being good. It wouldn't be totally surprising if Kershaw comes back and he's effective. It wouldn't be totally surprising, maybe a little more, if Walker Buehler is effective.
It wouldn't be totally surprising if Walker Buehler's effective. That goes against everything you've said about him for a few months.
As long as he's not throwing his four-seam fastball, he can be effective. If he keeps trying to mix that in and throwing it in the biggest spots, then he's not going to be effective. So it depends on how stubborn Buehler's going to be. Am I trusting him to make a start in the playoffs? Still, probably not. But would it be the worst thing in the world? Also, probably not. Whereas if you're playing like Kike Hernandez at shortstop in a playoff game, I think that's way worse than starting Walker Buehler in a playoff game. So
yeah.
if both of them are back, you don't really have to worry about this in the playoffs. And that's the main thing that's lucky for the Dodgers here. It's not the worst timing in the world for these injuries, but Mookie's going to make a bigger impact out now, whereas Yamamoto has more potential to hurt them down the line, probably.
Yeah. Laura with the super chat, she says, if you had to make a guess, how long will Betts and Yamamoto be out? On the Mookie piece, I think it was Jeff Snyder on Twitter who compared this to the Corey Seager injury, which I think was helpful. And he mentioned that Corey Seager was out 2.5 months when he fractured his hand with no surgery involved. So again, that would put Mookie Betts kind of beginning of September. Yamamoto, it's really hard. I tried digging into like rotator cuff strains with no surgery and timeline, and not a whole lot comes up. I'll put it that way. I would say 6 weeks feels like the absolute floor as far as best case scenario is that he's out for 6 weeks. But again, with shoulder stuff, like if 3 weeks from now, it turns out that it's torn and not strained, like would anyone be surprised? I don't think that would be totally shocking. So I would say Betts, it feels like 2.5 months, but that feels like a pretty safe estimate, give or take a couple weeks maybe. Whereas Yamamoto feels like 6 to question mark weeks is how I would phrase it, Blake.
Yeah, the Mookie one's definitely right. With Yamamoto, he's not even going to throw for a week. So once you do that, then you're going to kind of have to start building yourself back up even after that. And the longer you're out, the longer your rehab and build-up's going to be. So if he's not throwing for, let's say, like 2 or 3 weeks here, then he's going to have to also build up for 4 weeks or something like that, if not a little longer, maybe 5 or 6 weeks before he even starts that rehab assignment. So yeah, you're looking at a longer timeline with Yamamoto, and the only focus should be to get him back for the playoffs. Like, I don't think you're going to be thinking regular season besides maybe 1 or 2 starts in September.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So again, Laura, thank you for the super chat. We appreciate that. Let's get into the Mookie Betts injury. Dan Altavia throws a 98-mile-an-hour fastball that gets Mookie's left hand while on the bat, fractures it. Look, you knew immediately if you were watching this game, the way that Mookie Betts reacted, that this wasn't just like something he was going to shake off and stay in the game. He was rolling around, doing somersaults on the ground. He was writhing in pain. Despite the fact that it was his hand, it took him like 5 or 6 minutes, it felt like, to get off of the field for this one. The good news is there is no surgery needed, but Dave Roberts did say he would be out, quote, for some time. The roster move has already been made. Miguel Vargas has been called up. Miguel Rojas, as we discussed, will play shortstop with Kike being the backup. Here's what's interesting to me, Blake, and getting into this, the piece about Rojas filling in here. Rojas has been a platoon guy primarily for the Dodgers here. And he's basically played only against left-handed pitching, posting a 772 OPS, but he's playing just over 50% of the games. Kike Hernandez also is best against left-handed pitching. Kike has an OPS under 500 against righties. So how do you see the Dodgers, when we talk about like the impact in the short term, that's the biggest deal to me. I think Rojas has played in like 42 out of 73 games or something. But again, like 80% of his appearances has come against left-handed pitchers and not righties, which you see way more of righties, and they don't have a guy on the roster who can hit righties. So how do you see that playing out?
I want to say that Rojas would be at shortstop versus righties, and Biggio would be at third, and then Kike would take over at shortstop and move Rojas to third to kind of give him a little day off from shortstop there against lefties. But I'm not sure they're actually going to have Rojas play that much to facilitate that.
Yeah.
So it might just be based on matchups each day, like who Dave Roberts likes more versus that specific righty, or I don't know. It's not an ideal spot to be in either way, and that's kind of why the Mookie thing hurts them so much because you're playing essentially bad offensive players now versus righties, and you just don't have anyone to step up and take that spot. I argued on Twitter that Miguel Vargas should be in an everyday role because they need his offensive upside, but they're not going to do that. You'd have to put him in left field because they're not sitting Lux down or moving Lux back to short. And like, as much as I'd like to see Vargas play second base over Lux, not happening. So
what about over your boy Kevin Biggio
at third? They tried the Lux at third experiment. It didn't work out.
Vargas.
Well. Oh yeah, he hasn't played there in a while, and I don't think they're actually willing to do that now at this point. Like, they won't even play him at second right now. So he seems locked into an outfield spot. So I just don't know like what the right answer for the Dodgers is. It might just be based off vibes for the day. And like, I don't even know if you can argue with that because you don't have promising data behind them for either of those guys playing shortstop against righties. So
yeah,
I mean, what do you do there?
So here's an interesting thought for you, Blake. There's a guy in the organization who has hit well against righties, who bats left-handed, who also happens to play shortstop. His name is Trey Sweeney. The numbers aren't great at AAA, but he has an OPS that is dramatically better against righties than he's one of the worst hitters in AAA against lefties, and he's fairly good, albeit with some inflated AAA numbers against righties. I was not in favor of calling Trey Sweeney up, to be clear. But when I dig into the numbers and see that Rojas and Kike are best against lefties and both borderline awful, if not worse, against righties, and you have a guy in Trey Sweeney who plays shortstop, who has an 846 OPS against righties in AAA, why not call him up, especially if we just saw a situation where Miguel Vargas wasn't even playing at the major league level?
Because Sweeney isn't really ready to come up at this point. Like, the numbers are
define not ready. Like, we're talking about Kike Hernandez as a sub 500 OPS.
But I don't think you want to potentially rush someone who has a chance to be a potentially good player for you in the long run to kind of patch a hole that isn't great right now, but isn't really going to affect their postseason chances or outcome there. So, like, it's better to let Sweeney keep developing and actually getting everyday playing time. And I know the numbers are okay against righties in AAA, but like we've said all along, that's Coors Field squared, where everything flies and hitter numbers are just crazy out there. So I just don't think Trey Sweeney's ready. I think if they were going to call up a shortstop, you'd see Chris Owings first on the list there, because you'd have to add either of them to the 40-man, and you could DFA Chris Owings when you make a trade at some point. So yeah, I just don't really see Sweeney as an option.
Okay, let's talk trades then. There's three names, all of which have basically already come up. Willy Adames, Paul DeJong, and Bo Bichette are kind of the three shortstop names that I've seen kicked around. Willy Adames, obviously the guy that you've been on from the beginning. Adames has bounced back from a tough offensive year last year. I believe it's like a 118 weighted runs created plus, an OPS just under 800. Obviously, the key with Adames has never been his offense, although that's a plus. It's that he's one of the best defensive shortstops in the league. The issue with Adames is, are the Brewers actually going to be trading him? When I read Brewers blogs, there seems to be heavy skepticism that this is they seem to believe that this is just a national narrative that won't go away when the Brewers have made clear that they aren't going to be trading Willy Adames because he's too important, for what it's worth. How all in? Like, my question is, how much more urgent would you make acquiring a shortstop now than maybe 3 or 4 days ago, when they at least had a guy who was standing at shortstop and could kind of, they were patching it together when it sure seems like they no longer have an option to patch it together?
For me, I don't think it really changes because my focus has always been on the playoffs, and I think that's what the Dodgers are focused on too. Like, I didn't trust Mookie at shortstop, especially for the playoffs. He hasn't been a good defender this year, despite what Dave Roberts wants to say and try and build him up. But they need to figure out the shortstop spot at some point. Sooner the better. So for the meantime, like, you can live with Miguel Rojas at shortstop for 2 months or something. It's not like last year he was starting every single day and they still made the playoffs. Like, it's not going to hurt them too much right now. You just have to be focused on the playoffs, and that should be their only goal right now. Every move they make should be thought of as, how is this going to help us in the playoffs, and not how is this going to help us get to the playoffs? Because we know the Dodgers are going to be there. It's just a matter of making sure you have the best roster you can. And I think the Dodgers are a better team with Mookie Betts at second base or even the outfield than they are with him at shortstop. So if you can figure out that position, great. But I don't think it really necessarily makes it more important at this point.
So let me throw 3 proposals at you. I mocked out 3 trades, 2 Dodgers prospects going to Milwaukee for Willy Adames, keeping in mind that Willy Adames has basically half of a year left before he hits free agency. I'll preface this with, you might hear 1, 2, all 3 of these and think they're ridiculous trade proposals. It is nearly impossible to guess what a value will be for a player like this, given trade deadline sort of inflation and all of that. But let me throw the first one at you. Landon Knack and Jackson Ferris for Willy Adames. Would you do that trade?
I think I would, but I don't think the Brewers would.
Okay. You don't think it's enough?
Yeah, to get them to sell a key piece of their team in a playoff run, like it would have to be a serious overpay. And I know Ferris is a good piece and Knack is intriguing, but I just don't see them pulling the trigger on that. They would have to get a lot. Like, I know everyone wants to point out the Josh Hader trade, and they got a decent amount like on paper for that, but trading a reliever is a lot different than trading your starting shortstop who's a key piece of your club. So I just don't really see that happening.
Okay, what about Landon Knack and Gavin Stone? Not the Gavin Stone, excuse me, Kyle Hurt. Landon Knack and Kyle Hurt.
Yeah, I don't think they do that one either.
Okay, Diego Cartaya. I know you don't like Cartaya, but like if it's Landon Knack and Diego Cartaya,
I think you would have to give them like rushing and probably another good starter like Ferris and something else even, because
you would do that?
I'm not saying I would do it.
Okay.
I'm just saying
rushing
like,
and Ferris. If that was the cost, rushing and Ferris, would you do it?
I don't even think that's enough to get them to pull the trigger on it though.
Wow. Okay. That's
because,
fascinating.
Like they're
I'm not saying you're wrong
there. Like you send a really bad message to all your fans if you're trading a key piece of your team in a playoff run for 2 prospects.
But haven't they already said that? They traded away Josh Hader and Corbin Burns.
Josh Hader wasn't good when they traded him. He had like a 4 ERA, and they got back a major league reliever who is also a lefty and has had success in his career. So I think that's a lot different. The Burns trade was in the offseason and not well. They're first in their division and close to a playoff spot. So I just don't see it as like a possibility unless you're completely overpaying them to the point where they have to say yes.
Okay. Yeah, if it's rushing and Ferris and something else, it's like hang up the phone for me. I think Knack and Ferris or something like that. Even I question that because Knack is like a major league level pitcher right now with tons of team control. Jackson Ferris. I think there's a bunch of other names in there, but that's interesting. Let's go to another. Here we go. We got a super chat from Thomas. Does a Robert trade have to include Josue de Paula? What do you think, Blake?
No, because the Dodgers have a lot of prospects, but I'm sure the White Sox would ask about him. Although, considering it's the White Sox, maybe not. Maybe they might target lesser people who aren't as talented because that's the White Sox. But
would you trade de Paula in a Robert trade?
Yes, because basically you're hoping that de Paula can become Robert. Like, if he ends up having that production, you're happy about it. So if you can take that now and get him, lock up your center field spot for the long term, like I'm all good with that.
Okay. Thomas, thank you for the super chat. We appreciate it. Another name that I've seen mentioned in here is Paul DeJong. You've mentioned him as well. Make the case for Paul DeJong, because I'll be honest, I'm underwhelmed when I dug into him a little bit. So what do you like about him?
He's an actual shortstop who can play defense and hits for a little bit of power. That's about all. I think he's probably the most acquirable shortstop that's going to be available. That probably isn't like a backup caliber player. I know he's had some struggles, but he's also had some good times and he's having another good season. So it's not about loving the player. It's about liking him at shortstop with Mookie Betts at second more than liking Mookie at shortstop with Lux at second.
I look at DeJong's numbers and it feels like he's a marginal upgrade to me over Miguel Rojas. Like, I know there's some power there. Here's the numbers I see on DeJong. 47th percentile on fielding value, according to Baseball Savant. So he's an actual shortstop. He's basically league average defensively, depending on what metrics you want to look at. Barrel rate, hard hit rate are both above average, 70 to 80 percentile range. Everything else is really bad. His expected batting average based on quality of contact is worse than Gavin Lux's. his whiff rate, his strikeout rate, his walk rate are all bottom 6% in Major League Baseball. So that to me doesn't, like, I'm just looking at DeJong and saying, I'll take my chances with Miguel Rojas over Paul DeJong.
But I don't think we can trust Rojas to stay healthy if he's playing every day for the rest of the season. And if we want to talk about going into the postseason, like, that's a different discussion there. So sure, we can talk about that one because the Dodgers should be focused on the postseason. The Dodgers haven't seemed willing to let Miguel Rojas actually go into an everyday role with this current roster. And DeJong has been playing on an everyday basis and still producing enough. Like, I know the metrics aren't great. His batting average isn't good, but that's not the point of him. He's an everyday player who can play defense better than Mookie Betts. He can hit better than Gavin Lux. And that's all you're asking from him. You're not looking for him to come in and save the team. It just gives you another bench option because their bench isn't good. Like, if you want to think of DeJong as an upgrade over Kike or Chris Taylor, that's fine. If he's your backup to Miguel Rojas at short, I'm good with that. If you need a pinch hitter, I'm trusting that over Kike Hernandez or Chris Taylor in the playoffs. So I just think he's a cheap option that can help you now and just give you more upside on your roster compared to what they have.
Yeah, and somebody points out in the chat, he actually does have great splits against right-handed pitching. He's hitting over 300 with 11 of his 14 home runs against righties. So I suppose if you paint it that way, where he's not necessarily an entire answer to your shortstop situation, but he's a guy who's going to split at bats with Miguel Rojas and platoon with him at shortstop, all of a sudden, I'm far more interested in Paul DeJong, of course, depending on the value or the cost, excuse me. The last one here is Bo Bichette. We mentioned him earlier. 4+ win player over the last 3 years. He's been actually bad this year, weighted runs created plus in the 80s, but he's 26 years old. He has 1.5 years of team control. Blake, if these were my three options, Adames with half a year left, Paul DeJong, or Bichette, and the cost was commensurate, meaning not equal for all three of these, but you had to pay, let's even say 110 cents on the dollar for each of these three players, I would take Bichette in a heartbeat, meaning I would pay the 110 cents knowing the cost to get Bichette might be double, might be 2.5x either of these other guys. But if I'm going to trade the prospect capital, I would take my chances with Bichette and just sell the farm to get him. What are your thoughts on that?
I kind of agree, but I'm hesitant because he hasn't been good this year. He's been bad on offense and on defense. So, I'm not sure he's actually going to come in and fix the problem that they have at that position. Long term, he might be that answer there, but I'm just not sure he's the answer that they need right now. I would be interested in him depending on the cost. I wouldn't hate going to trade for him. Maybe he needs a change of scenery or something. And I think the Dodgers can help defenders with their positioning and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not totally out on him, but he just hasn't been great this year. So I think you kind of have to consider that when you're making a trade. He's not the locked in answer that it's going to come in and fix everything because he's having his troubles too.
See, and that, well, I don't disagree with that. It's just funny because when we went back to our conversations about Adames, and Adames was terrible offensively last year, and all that got pushed to the side because it was like, no, it's Willy Adames. It's going to be fine. But with Bichette, it's like, no, he's been bad for 3 months. I'm not as interested in him.
It's the difference of being in season versus out of season. Things happen during a season that can change things, and then you can hope they rebound the next year. Whereas Adames, he had a bad year. I think there was a bounce back that was going to be there. But like we've seen with Cody Bellinger, he needed that change of scenery there, and he got it. Maybe that was the reason, but maybe it was just starting a fresh year and moving on. I mean, you don't really know. It's easier to predict in-season struggles continuing than it is to, say, he's going to bounce back in season, where you can have a little more hope in the off season for that kind of stuff.
No, I think that's fair. With Bichette, knowing that, again, 4+ wins 3 years in a row coming into this one, that's what gives me more encouragement. He's also 26 years old. And so, it's not like he's aging out of his prime or something there. So there's options. Again, do the Dodgers actually pay up? Can they find someone who's a willing trade partner? All of that remains to be seen. Let's shift real quick and talk about Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Last week, he has his start pushed back a few days, which of course raised some alarms for Dodgers fans. Then he shows up on Saturday. The velocity is way down. And then we get the video in the TV video of Mark Pryor coming over to Dave Roberts to tell him something. I'm guessing, hey, his velocity is way down. Dave Roberts basically dropping a very easily lip readable F-bomb on television, running into the tunnel with the trainers, and then Yamamoto is out of the game. Initially announced as an injury list, placed on the IL with triceps tightness after more testing. We were told it is a strained rotator cuff. Dave Roberts said, quote, "It is not season ending, but it's going to be some time." We mentioned it looks like we're talking minimum 4 to 6 weeks, but that feels like the floor, not necessarily an accurate timeline. The good news for the Dodgers, we're going to get a Bobby Miller update here shortly that he's going to be back, but walk me through kind of the emotions over the last 24 hours as Yamamoto comes in. The velocity is bad. He gets taken out, and then today hearing the report that it's a strained rotator cuff.
The emotions, I don't think I've had time to process that. I was writing stories and going and covering everything, and it was just a whirlwind, I guess, there. But yeah, it's not ideal for the Dodgers, of course. I mean, Yamamoto was second best pitcher on their staff there, and they're going to have to replace him now. They finally committed to the 6-man rotation, and then as soon as that happens, you see Yamamoto get hurt. So I thought that was kind of funny in an ironic way there, because they've been so hesitant to just say we're going to a 6-man rotation. And I mean, we always talk about that. We say, like, you can plan for all these things, but it's probably not going to be the thing you're talking about in a day or two, because baseball happens and things happen. So a little ironic there, but
Dave finally admitted that they were going to do a 6-man rotation, right? Like, hadn't he finally in the last few days said it out loud with Miller due back?
For at least one turn through the rotation. Yeah.
Amazing.
So it was kind of funny there, but yeah, it's not great for the Dodgers. I mean, you hope he can come back, but the main focus is going to be on getting him back for the postseason. And like we said, that's not really a lock to happen. So that's the main concern there.
Yeah. In the meantime, let's say this is a few months till he's back. Do you believe the Dodgers have what's necessary on the starting pitching side, not to make a deep playoff run without him, but to at least maintain their divisional lead and continue to be, one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the National League without him?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you have Glasnow leading your rotation, and every time you have an ace in your rotation, you can kind of make the rest work.
Yeah.
Then you've got some other options behind him with upside, like Miller's coming back, and
Stone
is there. Paxton has been okay. Bueller has been less than okay, but hopefully going to be okay with his adjustments. You've got Landon Knack in the minor leagues. Ryan Yarbrough can make some starts if you need him to. Like, they have options that are major league quality starters. So it's not like a major thing like last year when they had 2 pitchers and you're kind of stringing the rest together. Like, they're in a much different situation this year compared to last year with pitcher injuries.
Yeah, I'm with you. Let's get into some injury updates. Again, thank you to everybody joining us live. Over 1,350 people here, including Scott Gierman hanging out in the chat. So thank you, everybody, for joining us on Facebook, on Twitter, and on YouTube. Let's talk about some of those injury updates. The good news for the Dodgers, Yamamoto going to be out of the rotation, and Bobby Miller simultaneously slotting in, expected to return on Wednesday in Coors Field, I believe. He'll slot right in. Where are you at with Bobby Miller? 4 rehab appearances. None of them were very good. He finishes with 13 earned runs in 11 2/3. His last outing was 4 2/3, 6 hits, 3 walks, 5 earned, and 4 strikeouts. You and I feel like have gone back and forth about whether these are simply spring training stats that should be entirely ignored, or whether there's some kernel of truth in them. So when you look at what we've seen from Bobby Miller in his 4 rehab appearances at Oklahoma City, what do you make of the results?
I more so don't put much stock into them. Like, we debated about this with Walker Buehler. I think that was a very different situation when he was trying to completely build up his feel and pitch mix and everything. And there's already been regression with this stuff. With Miller, it's just about finding it and kind of building up that stamina. Like, I'm not too worried about him. The results are what they are, but he has elite stuff. We know that. And I think he'll be fine overall once he gets the major league adrenaline back, and not too much to worry about, in my opinion.
Yeah. Sorry, by the way. Thank you, chat, for holding me accountable. We missed the super chat from Noah here, talking about the Dodgers injuries and saying at least we're facing the Rockies, Angels, and White Sox next. I had mentioned Rockies and Angels. Throw in the White Sox there as well. So, again, good news for the Dodgers, although, as Blake pointed out, don't get too excited. When the Dodgers go to Coors Field nothing ever seems to go according to plan. The Angels probably think that the Dodgers are their rivals, so there might be a little extra motivation there. And I guess maybe you don't have to worry about the White Sox. But the other two, there might be a slight reason for concern. Is that fair, Blake?
Weren't the White Sox on a little winning streak there for a minute?
Okay, Blake says to be worried about the White Sox as well. So there you go. Tons of concern for all three. So that means when they win, 2/3 of these games, Blake, and go 6-3 in their next 9, then we'll look back and we won't say, hey, it was just the Rockies, Angels, and White Sox, right? We'll say, hey, you know what? Formidable opponents, reasons to be concerned. Dodgers took care of business.
I mean, if they go 6-3 in their next 9 games, I'll be okay with that.
Okay.
All
right.
Give them their credit.
Let's see. The White Sox have not been awesome. They are 2-6 in their last 8. They're 4-6 in their last 10, but prior to that is when they lost. I don't know what this number is, but a big number, 13, 16. It feels like they got swept by the Orioles, swept by the Blue Jays, swept by the Brewers, swept by the Cubs, and then lost the game on either end of that as well. So whatever that was before 6-4, a 4-6 stretch. So the best you can say is they were 4-6, and it's worse no matter how else you slice it. So so are we still concerned about the White Sox, Blake, or are we back to?
I mean, it's a major league team. If they drive nice cars too, credit to Mookie there. Maybe they start Crochet in game 1 and he kind of dominates the Dodgers because he's been amazing this year. And then you're in a 2-game series there, and maybe something just goes lucky for them. The Dodgers hit 15 line drives all at people and they're all outs, and you just never know. It's baseball.
Okay, I just want this energy if things go well, because I feel like the Dodgers never get credit when they beat bad teams and only get penalized when they lose them.
I said I'll give them credit for it.
All right.
Winning at Coors is always tough.
Crochet currently, this is massive projection, but ESPN projects out a little further than MLB. Crochet versus Paxton, game 1 of that series. So you might be right. It might be a 2-game series after that one, Blake.
I mean, although Paxton might look like Crochet against the White Sox offense, I think they have one of the worst offenses of all time.
They do. All right, let's talk injury updates again. Thank you, Noah, for the super chat. Thank you, chat, for making sure I saw that one. Clayton Kershaw making his first rehab appearance also on Wednesday, this one for the Quakes. He's thrown a series of sim games. He's ahead of schedule in his recovery, still looking at about a month, but he's ahead of schedule, which for a guy that I think there was lots of skepticism about whether he, rightfully so, myself included, about whether he would even pitch this year. I know you've been skeptical, Blake. Are the fact that he's making a rehab appearance, like, have we crossed the line into starting to believe this is actually going to happen, or are you still sort of still have reservations about this whole thing?
Both. I'm more optimistic about him, but until we actually see him throw some rehab games, still going to be a little concerned there. He's definitely making good progress and a lot quicker than I expected from him, so that's great there. But you just never know until they're actually on the mound. And I will say we might have some coverage out there from Rancho, so stay tuned. Hopefully we can get that stuff up.
Is that a guy by the name of Blake Williams that might be traveling down to Rancho?
Potentially.
Wow, there we go. Like to see that. We got another super chat here from 300 GJW. When the hell did Michael Grove get hurt? Placed on the injured list with right intercostal strain, Blake. I share the same question that 300 GJW has, and I am firmly of the belief that this is what we call a phantom IL stint for a guy who pitched 3 times in 5 days with a lot of pitches and on a team in which they needed starting pitchers quickly and wanted to kind of give their guy a favor. So that's my view. When did Grove get hurt? I don't think he actually got hurt. That's my view. Your thoughts?
I agree, kind of, but I thought they would have made Banda the guy who went on the IL because he threw, I think, 2 1/3 the day before that, and it seemed like they're kind of just running him out there to get the innings out of him. So maybe there's a little more something with Grove. I'm not sure they want to risk doing phantom IL stuff because MLB has kind of cracked down on that. So maybe Grove said he's a little sore or something, and then they said hey, you're going on the IL then.
Banda threw 32 pitches, only 32 pitches last night, which is a surprising number. But he had 2 days off. So I guess both guys had thrown 3 times in 5 days. Banda had only thrown once in the last 3 days, whereas I think Michael Grove had thrown a ton of pitches in like all of those games. Let's see. Grove threw 30 pitches last night. He threw 23 pitches 2 days before that and 20 pitches 2 days before that. So again, we both agree. We think it's a phantom stint, although maybe you're slightly more skeptical than me. Just my view.
Jonathan brought up, doesn't Grove have options? And yes, he does. But if you want to give him time off from pitching, like, it makes more sense just to IL him. And it does better by him keeping him on the major league roster for that. He gets his major league salary and travels with the team and all that if he wants to. So it's a little harder to say, like, hey, go down, make your minor league salary for 2 weeks here, and then we'll bring you back. It's a little easier to say, like, nudge them and be like, hey, you're going on the IL, but you're keeping your major league money.
Yeah, exactly. And to answer the question, his IL stint coincided with Yamamoto's, which is why it kind of flew under the radar. But I'm with you. I think they looked at Grove and said, hey, you know what? You had to wear one yesterday, throwing 2 innings on a day when you probably weren't expecting to pitch, having to go back out there for a second time for the, not the first time of late. And so, hey, keep collecting those major league paychecks, take a couple weeks off. Going into Coors Field, we definitely can't have unavailable relievers, knowing the pitching rotation stuff, Bobby Miller coming back. And so that's my view. The last update here is Max Muncy, shut down from swinging a bat for at least the next week, still fielding, throwing, and running. This was Dave Roberts' quote. I don't know a timeline, but it's even slower than we all expected. But hey, you know what, Blake? Not slower than me and you expected. So Dave Roberts shouldn't be speaking for us because we expected this timeline, not the one that he gave us initially.
Yeah, oblique injuries are always tough. Like, I think Max Muncy said it's the worst injury a position player can have. And there's truth to that. You can't swing or do anything. Like, you can't really throw much because everything you do in baseball, you're rotating your body. And with the oblique injury, you can't do that. You have to just let it heal. He's been doing some minor workout stuff on the field, but like nothing major. So he's a long ways away. And it's unfortunate because the Dodgers really need him in their lineup.
Yeah, I'm with you. Let's take a pause real quick and give a shout out to our sponsor and supporter, So Rare MLB. Let me tell you about a competition that they have going on. We've mentioned on our show, but your journey to MLB All-Star Weekend starts on So Rare MLB this June. Join the action for a chance to win a VIP experience to MLB All-Star Weekend by collecting digital trading cards and playing fantasy baseball. Participate in the All-Star Collection event by building collections of your favorite MLB teams and players. The grand prize is a VIP experience at MLB All-Star Weekend, including a $1,000 travel voucher, tickets to the Home Run Derby, All-Star Game, Futures Game, and more. Free to enter. Every new sign-up gets one entry, so start collecting today. Plus, the June Chase competition offering $20,000 in total cash rewards and more chances to win an MLB All-Star VIP experience. These events run from June 10th to June 30th, so don't miss your chance to enjoy All-Star Weekend like never before. Play So Rare MLB today. Blake, both you and I have been playing this game. I, again, had a successful week, 291st place out of 10,000. So we're getting a nice little tier 1 card added to the collection. How did your week this past week go? How's the roster looking about a month and a half into us playing this game?
Yeah, so for this current week that's ongoing was the first week I forgot to set my lineup. I was real disappointed by that. But I did make sure to lock in my lineup for tomorrow. So we're on track there. The week before that I won a gold Mark Leiter card. I think that's his name. The Cubs.
Okay.
Not a great player, but, solid reliever I can throw into some games, throw some lineups there, get some points. So hoping to get back on track and win some more cards here. But yeah, I'm real disappointed I forgot that week there. I think that was from the day, I think Matt was covering for me. He gave me the day off there. And I kind of just slept most of the day because I was exhausted. And when I woke up, like, the deadline was passed for it. So
you and I have both dipped into buying some of these cards. So you can play for free, common level cards, and then you can get into limited and above. How have you, obviously you buy, the cool thing about buying cards is that it's like the stock market a little bit. You buy them and then you can resell them at kind of whatever the value is that day. There's not a set price. There's only like 1,000 of each of these cards. And so they're limited in the, I know you bought a Glass Now card. The value has gone way up on that. Any other purchases that you've made that you feel pretty good about, a few weeks after?
Yeah, I think Gavin Stone was the first one I bought, and he's been great, of course. Awesome. And yeah, Evan Phillips finally came back. I have him in my mix there. Ryan Pepio got lit up. I had him on my team. Not great about that. I, of course, have Joey Gallo, because how could I not? I got Miguel Vargas, so now that he's coming back, hopefully I can get some points there. And then I got Corey Seager. Felt like I stole that one at the cost I got him at, so real happy about that one.
Love it. I spent on some pitching. Luis Castillo, George Kirby from the Mariners, like both of those. My kind of guy that I feel the best about is Matt Waldron of the Padres. I picked him up like 1 or 2 games after he instituted the knuckleball, and he's been like one of the best pitchers in baseball for like his last 5 outings. And then I bought low on Sean Murphy and Austin Riley. So we'll see if either of those guys turn it around, but kind of buying at the bottom and hoping they turn around. So if you haven't yet, please go in the description, join us on So Rare MLB. We'd love to have you join us. And again, if you create a new account using our link below, you have a chance to win all of that All-Star Weekend package. I mentioned ticket to the Home Run Derby, All-Star Game, Futures Game, and more, as well as if you start buying cards, you can build a collection as well. So check out So Rare MLB again using the link below. Let's get to a couple super chats here, Blake, and then we'll take couple more things to hit, and then we'll take a couple questions. Rod says, could you still use Muncy's speed as a pinch runner? Yeah, I think they're holding out hope for slightly more than pinch running. If this were the end of the season, who knows? Maybe they would add him to the roster just because. But in June, I think it's safe to say, Blake, that they're going to wait for the entirety of Max Muncy to be back. Fair?
Yeah, you want maximum Muncy, not minimum Muncy.
I like that. 300 GJW with no Yamamoto till late August. Again, hopefully late August. Do the Dodgers look to add starting pitching now? You mentioned, kind of joked about possibly adding Crochet in a White Sox trade. Obviously, Bobby Miller slots in, so they've got 5 starting pitchers with Buehler, with Paxton, with Glasnow, with Gavin Stone. They have Landon Knack down at AAA, who has proven he can pitch at the major league level. Clayton Kershaw, about a month away from returning, it seems. Dustin May potentially back at some point, whether it's as a reliever or a starter, to be determined. I talked to Rob Hill the other day. He says, watch out, River Ryan, potentially MLB debut at some point this season. So given all of the names they have floating around, if Yamamoto's absence is extended and may actually turn out to be season ending, do you think the Dodgers would need to go after a starting pitcher?
No, I don't think they're going to at this point. If it becomes season ending, then maybe they toss around the idea of getting a frontline starter, but I just don't see that happening, really. They have bigger needs, and I think they're just going to kind of roll with what they have. The pitching hasn't been the problem for this team this year. It's been the offense, so that's the focus you have to have, and you just kind of hope you can piece it together with all the guys you do have in the rotation. Like, hope that Buehler becomes more effective, hope that Kershaw comes back, hope that May comes back, hope that Miller is good when he comes back. So you have enough pieces to make it work for the regular season, so I just don't think they're going to go out and push for a starter.
Yeah, and at least you can wait till the deadline, because by the time the deadline rolls around, you'll know, hey, where's Bobby Miller at? What kind of performance? What's Paxton, Buehler? What do they look like? Where's Kershaw in his rehab? But I'm with you. For the first time, it actually feels like they might have enough guys there to make do. Let's talk real quick about a really cool story that's in Dodgers land happening that many people might not know about. And that's a guy by the name of Michael Petersen. The Dodgers added 2 relievers to their roster today, JP Fireeisen, who you may be familiar with, and a guy by the name of Michael Petersen. And if you haven't heard his story, A, I don't blame you, and B, you will be excited, because if he were to pitch in a game for the Dodgers, it would be making his major league debut as a 30-year-old. This is his first season with the Dodgers. He signed a minor league deal. He spent 5 years with the Brewers, was with the Rockies in 2020, 21, and 22, but basically made 1 appearance in those seasons before having a full season last year. So 4 seasons in the Rockies organization. In the first 3, he made just 1 appearance, pitched all of last year. He has a career 4.04 ERA in the minor leagues across 167 games. However, this year with the Dodgers, a 1.61 ERA, a 37% strikeout rate, a .72 whip, and 100-mile-an-hour fastball. He would become the 4th British-born player to debut in the major leagues in the last 33 years, Blake. He selected the number 90. He would be the first Dodgers player ever to wear the number 90, and he would be making his major league debut at 30 years old. All of this, to me, is an awesome story. I cannot wait for this guy to make his debut, and I hope that he's awesome.
Yeah, he was one of the best pitchers in AAA this year, best relief pitchers in AAA this year. And Yeah, it's exciting to see a guy who has worked so hard for so long in the minor leagues to actually come through and potentially make his major league debut. And I found out earlier today he went to Riverside Community College, so he's a local guy. I
Powerhouse.
mean, yeah, they won 5 championships. When I looked it up, me and Jeff were trying to figure out like how he went from the United Kingdom to Riverside Community College, and they apparently have a decent program over there with 5 championships. So yeah, I mean, it's a fun story for him. He also mixes in a cutter. I don't think we mentioned there. That's been really tough on hitters. So he seems like an intriguing piece. And I mean, anytime the Dodgers sign a reliever, we have to be like, hold up, what do they like here? What's going on? Is this guy going to be their next Evan Phillips? So hopefully Petersen can make an impact. And if not, he'll go back to AAA, but at least he'll have made his major league debut. And that's always a cool moment for a player.
I told you, like, if I came up to the Dodgers and they were like, hey, what number do you want to wear? I think I would do what presumably he did, which was, is there any number that nobody has ever worn before? And I would just take that. Wouldn't you want to go down as like, when they're like, what's the best Dodger to wear every number? And they get to 90 and they're like, well, Michael Peterson's the only guy, so I guess he makes the list. I would want to be the first guy to wear the number.
I mean, yeah, I think that would be cool. It would also be cool to have a real number like that people want the jersey of and stuff. Like no one's going out and buying a number 90 jersey.
Huh?
People have some biases toward numbers in sports, so it's cool. But now I'm wondering how many other players like haven't worn other numbers. Like what numbers are still open on the Dodgers?
That's
like
a
has
great
someone
question.
worn 93? Has someone worn 92? Like, we got to do some research there and figure it out.
Yeah. I mean, Baseball Reference, I feel like has a pretty easy way to look this up. Let's see. Well, let's see. This is going to take a while. I'm just going through. So far, we're at 14. Everyone has been worn. 19's retired. There we go. 20 also retired. Some guy wore number 22. It looks like 29. Beltray. There we go.
Who wore 22?
I don't know. It's been a while, I think, since we've seen that guy. So hard to say. This is terrible content as I'm just scrolling through this. 58, 59.
You probably have to skip up to the 90s.
Yeah, we're through 66. Yasiel Puig, shout out. Oh, here we go. 69 has never been worn. I'll let the jokes write themselves. 73 has not been worn.
73 hasn't.
78 and 79 have not been worn. 82, 83, 84 have not been worn. 86 has not been worn. 89 through 96. So a whole span of numbers there. 89 through 96 have not been worn. So there you go. Thoughts?
I feel like we'll see 96 at some point. I mean, I'm just thinking like players might want to wear birth year, and like you're talking about those 90s numbers. Like people might want to say, hey, that's the year I was born. I'm going to wear that one kind of thing.
Yeah,
so
fair.
Around those numbers, I think you could probably see those soon. But
okay,
yeah,
somebody's saying Grove wore 78. So let me go back. There's a decent chance. Oh, this jersey. This is 3 years old. This article I'm referencing. So things have changed. I did ask somebody about 00. Brian Wilson wore 00 for the Dodgers. Shout out to Brian Wilson for wearing that. Okay, one more story to get to before we'll get to some questions. Holy smokes, 1,500 people in here live. Thank you for joining us. There's been one name on the trade market, Blake, that has begun to get linked to the Dodgers. This, according to John Heyman. He mentioned relief pitcher Tanner Scott of the Miami Marlins as a guy that may be available, and the Dodgers were among 3 or 4 teams linked to him. He's a really good pitcher. You look at his numbers. Aside from his whip, everything else is good. Strikes out a lot of guys. The ERA starts with a 1 this year, I believe. What's your take on Tanner Scott, and how interested should the Dodgers be?
I would be all over getting Tanner Scott if they could pull that one off. I think he's an elite reliever, and the numbers haven't totally shown that with the Marlins, but there's a ton of upside there. He was fantastic last year, and not that the Dodgers need a reliever. Like, I think the bullpen might be the strongest spot on the team right now, which saying something for the Dodgers there, because it seems like every year it's what reliever are they going to get to fix the bullpen? And now we're talking about like, it would be a nice thing to have, but do they need it? Probably not. But when you talk about the possibility of having Tanner Scott and Alex Vesia as your lefties combined with Evan Phillips.
Come on, don't exclude my guy Banda. He had one bad day, all right?
I mean, like talking about the playoffs, high leverage spots, you go Tanner Scott, Alex Vesia, Blake Treinen, Daniel Hudson, Evan Phillips. maybe Brewster Gratterall. Like that's
Anthony Banda.
In the 5th or 6th inning, yeah. Like that's an elite bullpen you can run out there, and even if one guy's down one day, you have like 4 other options that can come in and just be elite. I think it adds so much to the team, and it just makes a ton of sense to get it done if you can. So I would love to see it. He could be another potential closer behind Evan Phillips when he's out on days, and you just have so many matchups you could make. Like regardless of what reliever you bring in at any point, you're bringing in an elite arm. It would be pretty hard to mismanage that group.
Yeah. What's interesting about Scott is I love the fact that he leads Major League Baseball in exit velocity. And he's been top 10% in that basically every single year. So if you can limit hard contact, I think that's a skill. Fastball, 96.5 miles an hour, 97th percentile expected batting average. The only thing that makes me skeptical that the Dodgers would be interested in him is the one glaring hole in Tanner Scott's game is he walks a crap load of guys. 16.8% walk rate this year. That is the 2nd percentile. That means he's one of the worst in Major League Baseball at walk rate. That's why his whip is 1.21. So I know the ERA is really good. He's striking guys out. What's interesting is that last year his walk rate was less than 50%, 7.8% last year. But if you go back to 2022, it was the worst in baseball at 16%. So this isn't a reflection necessarily of like, would Tanner Scott be a good thing? I just find it hard to believe, Blake, that the Dodgers would pursue a guy who has that particular glaring hole in his game.
I think that's fair, but there's just so much upside there. And maybe you make one little tweak or something that kind of gets him throwing more strikes, or I'm not sure who the Marlins like everyday catcher is, but maybe he's bad at framing and getting Will Smith and Austin Barnes helping him out would benefit him. Or like there's a lot of different factors that go into it. And, sometimes the walk is just setting up a double play. So I don't think that's a strategy you want to go down too often. But I mean, I think the Dodgers can kind of help that a little bit more so than the Marlins are able to help him out there.
Yeah, Scott will turn 30 years old next month. This is his last year of team control. He'll be a free agent at the end of the year. I guess my bottom line is like, if they traded for him, I obviously wouldn't be disappointed in it. He's a rental. He's coming from the Marlins. Those two things make me believe the cost probably wouldn't be something that I would like be devastated to see walking out the door. I guess I just tend to agree with you, Blake, that the bullpen is the strongest area. Now, you could make a compelling case that so just make a stronger piece of the team. And if you're worried about your starting pitching, and then maybe if you have to go to a bullpen game or if a starter comes out after 5 innings in the playoffs, if you've got 5 or 6 arms you really, really like out there, then maybe, that's sort of how you patch things together in the postseason. But the walk rate terrifies me, even if everything else is good. Again, 2023, the fact that last year that number was less than 8%, which still is about league average. It's not very great, but if everything else stays the same, you're limiting contact, getting swing and miss, striking guys out, throwing hard, and then league average on walk rate, I can live with it. It's just the 17% walk rate this year that would scare me a little. So again, John Heyman linking the Dodgers to Tanner Scott, a reliever from the Miami Marlins. We'll see if I don't know if people watching the show, if you find him to be compelling and that's somebody you would want to trade for, but please let us know if that is the case. All right, let's get to some questions here. I know we're already at the hour 8 mark and we've taken a bunch of super chats. So let's do 2 or 3 questions before we get out of here. Again, thanks to everybody joining us live here on Sunday night. Happy Father's Day, by the way, to all the fathers out there. Hopefully you did something fun. I got California Pizza Kitchen tonight for myself, Blake, and love it. You a CPK guy?
It's okay. It's kind of overpriced, I feel like, but
yeah.
I mean, it
barbecue chicken chop salad at California Pizza Kitchen is the only salad that I'll ever feel not awful about spending $15 to $18 on. So it's got that going for us. Barbecue chicken pizza, elite. It was funny. I'll say this. I got it, my kids, and like, it was like fancy pizza and they were like not interested at all. They're like, can we just have like the frozen pizza that you throw in the oven? Because we like that. We don't like mozzarella cheese and Parmesan cheese. We want just the crap that comes frozen. So amazing stuff. All right, David, question here. This is a good one we didn't get to. Batting order. Mookie Betts out of the lineup. How do you see the Dodgers constructing the top of their order?
So Dave Roberts said Ohtani is the likely favorite to lead off, which going back to the offseason before they announced who the lineup order was going to be, I threw out the idea of Ohtani leading off, and I like that idea a lot. So I'm totally behind that one. And then
Will
after
Smith
that,
second, Freddie Freeman third, or Freddie Freeman second, Will Smith third?
I think they'd go with Will Smith second just to kind of break up the lefties, and then Teoscar fourth, and then whatever group of guys you're running out after that through those spots. So it's a little dicey there, but I mean, I don't have any problems with Ohtani leadoff. I think that's fun. He's got speed, he's got power, he can get on base, he's got contact ability there. Like, get him the most at bats and let him go to work.
I'm with you. Javier has two questions. The first one we answered. The second is, with Yamamoto out and them being back to 5 starting pitchers, do you think Landon Knack should be brought back up to go back to a 6-man kind of a rotation, Blake?
Do I think so? Probably yes. Are they going to do it? Probably not. I think that's all there is to it. They didn't want to commit to a 6-man rotation to begin with. It's just kind of the situation that they had come up with all the healthy starters. And I know they've been running a 6-man rotation, but they'd rather keep the 8th guy in their bullpen than actually commit a full-time starter to one of those spots. So, yeah, I just don't really see it happening.
Laura wants to know, did my Yamamoto bobblehead lose value, Blake?
If its arm is healthy and attached to the bobblehead, you're still good.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, in my book, a Yamamoto bobblehead has not been impacted from a value perspective. I'm with you on that one, Blake.
He's on a 12-year contract. You got time.
Exactly. My thing with bobbleheads is always, I either want guys who have like definitively done something for the team that I want to remember, or guys that I'm going to feel good about having their bobblehead up behind me for like extended periods of time. And Yamamoto checks box number 2 like easily. He's going to be there for 12 years. They're paying him lots of money. So you're not going to hate that bobblehead.
So you're excluding Joe Beimel?
Yeah. Actually, Hung-Chi Kuo is hanging out on the window side of things over here, right next to Howie Kendrick. Adrian Gonzalez over there. Adrian Gonzalez is top tier over on this side. Although Kenta Maeda over there, so that's a nice little spot. The second spot is here. This is Andre Ethier, Sean Green, and Hideo Nomo. They get like nearby the desk, but not in the background. And then here I've got like all-time guys, duplicates. These are my favorite guys not on the team. So that's Manny Ramirez, Yasiel Puig, and Hanley Ramirez. Freaking loved Hanley Ramirez. And then we've got some duplicates down there. Star rookie Gavin Stone, number 71 or whatever number he was wearing last year. Come on now, Blake. That one's looking awesome.
I'll trade you my James Outman star rookie for your Gavin Stone.
That was hilarious because I was pissed because Matt hooked us up. Shout out to Matt. Shout out to Foco. We appreciate you. But he sent you the Outman and me the Stone. And I loved Outman. And at first I was pissed about it, but now we're feeling great. And hey, if you want to send the Outman my way, just not for Gavin Stone. We'd have to figure something else out.
Okay. We'll talk trades.
Yeah, we'll talk trades. Exactly. All right. Let's here we go. Elisheva, we'll use this as the last one. Why did the Dodgers bring up Vargas rather than someone else? I think if I were asking this question, Blake, I would be asking this from the perspective of, I think Scott had the stat that he had like 20 at-bats in 22 days of being called up or whatever the number was. He was getting like 1 at-bat per day on average. If that's the case, and he doesn't play shortstop, so I don't see his playing time dramatically being different necessarily, then why bring Vargas up rather than somebody else?
I'm not really sure. I was wondering that. I thought it would be like Chris Owings coming up just to give them another bench guy for versatility. My main answer, if I had to pick one, would probably be because Vargas is on the 40-man and they don't have to make any other moves to bring him up.
Yeah.
I don't think they have anyone else on the 40-man who's healthy or not already on the roster. So your options are very limited there. And Vargas is the best of their group that they could call up, most offensive upside there. So he deserves to be on the major league roster and he deserves to be playing and starting every day. But if they don't give him that opportunity, I question too why they brought him up besides the 40-man stuff.
So there is one other guy who is healthy, Blake, who is not a catcher.
James Outman.
Yeah.
You can't call up an outfielder to replace an infielder.
Vargas is an outfielder.
Yeah. Well, that's to my point more. Like, why are they calling up Vargas?
Yeah.
But I think the difference there is Outman's a lefty outfielder, and he would kind of be taking Hayward's spot essentially because you're not sitting Fajes and you're not sitting Teoscar. So you can at least platoon Vargas with Hayward essentially. And then you have Taylor and Kike freed up for infield spots if needed. So I guess that makes sense from that perspective, but they actually have to go out and platoon him to make that work.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, Outman, who knows? Outman has been down in June after having a great May. down at the AAA level. He's had a poor June. He has had 2 home runs in his last 4 games, so he has that going for him, but he has just 4 hits and 18 at bats. So who knows? Yeah, it doesn't make sense. I mean, I guess with Outman, like Vargas could play the corner outfield, which in theory there's more of an out need there than there is in like center field. That I don't know, but I'm with you. I think that the best point that was made was if you look at the Dodgers 40-man roster, there are 4 players, if you include Vargas, who are not at the major league level and who are healthy. It's Hunter Fiducia, who's a catcher, Diego Cartaya, who's a catcher, and then Outman and Vargas. So the question is Outman or Vargas, and I think you can make the case that it should be Vargas, but as to whether he should actually be up and sitting on the bench and not doing anything. How about this, Blake? How about they just play Vargas? How about they just do the thing we all want them to do, and Chris Taylor never sees the field, and Kike Hernandez never sees the field unless he's playing shortstop, and it's just Vargas, like playing every other day in one of the corner outfield spots. How about that?
I would play him every day, but yeah.
Because you're out on Hayward too.
I mean, if you have to play Vargas at second base, I'd put him there. Like,
well, I mean, but he's only played outfield for like the last 6 months, so
yeah, he'll figure it out.
Look, I'd put him at third. If we're going to do that, just stick him at third. Biggio stinks. I know you love the guy, but he stinks. So let's just get Vargas up.
I mean, whatever you can do to get Vargas in the lineup, I'm for it.
We agree on that. Hey, everybody, thanks for joining us. We're over the hour 15 mark, so we are going to check off for now. That is Blake Williams. I am Jeff Spiegel. As always, check out DodgerBlue.com, DodgerBlue1958 on social media. And, of course, if you're new here to the YouTube page, please subscribe. Ring the notification bell. We are live every Tuesday night, me and Scott, with post-game shows. Friday nights, me and Anthony. We were gone this past weekend because of some Father's Day stuff. We will be back this Friday for a post-game show on Friday. And then myself and Blake Williams, and maybe someday soon, Matthew Moreno joining us again on Sunday nights. Plus, we've got morning content Monday through Friday, whether it's clip-ups from long-form shows or new stuff. We will have new stuff tomorrow morning. So make sure you subscribe here. And if you're a podcast person, Apple, Spotify, Google, check out the DodgerHeads podcast. Give us a subscription, rate, and review. We would greatly appreciate that. Dodgers win today, but lose 2 of their best 2 players in the last 24 hours. So tough weekend for the Dodgers, but the world moves on. Headed to Coors Field, one of the worst places for the Dodgers to ever play this week against the Rockies before heading back to Southern California to play the Angels. Enjoy the rest of your night, folks. As always, go Dodgers.